Hallelujah, hallelujah indeed. I'm so glad to have you in the church that love is building here in West Sacramento with all the smoke, all the allergens that are up. It's still great to have you here. God is good when? I'm so glad. Today, I want to just remind us what kind of a church we're in. We're in a church of many beliefs. For those of you who are visiting for the first time, I've boiled those many beliefs down into four, and here are the four. Number one is that God is all there is. There's no oppositional power to that power. There's no external evil. There's no external devil. Now, you and I know there's plenty of evil and plenty of devilishness in this world. We're experiencing it almost on a daily basis right now with all of the separation and the fractureness of this country. But what we believe is that all evil, all devilishness stops and starts right here in the minds of human beings. The second belief is that all thought is creative and influential, and as a result of that, we're thoughtful what kind of thinking that we can do around here. We don't beat ourselves up. If we have a thought that doesn't work, we simply put in a new thought that does work, and we keep moving on. We're not a shaming tribe. We're not a blaming tribe. We just put in a new thought, keep moving on. I had a haircut in Idaho last week, and I just had to put a new thought on and keep moving on. But I was able to do that. The third belief is that everything in our experience is either a call for love or an expression of love. No exceptions. A good thing for me to remember again. A call for love or an expression of love. No exceptions. The last belief that we have, that we hold on to with all of our heart, all of our mind, and all of our soul, is that you are whole, perfect, and complete, just as you are right this second. So knowing that that's the kind of church we're in, I'd like to just welcome anybody who's joining us for the first time, and welcome back Barbara and Kathy and Irene, Janelle, Larissa, T, and Scarlett. So glad you're all here.
So glad you came to celebrate Spirit. You are welcome here. We hope this isn't your last time. Anytime you're passing by, you are welcome here. So glad you came. Feel free to worship and celebrate Spirit's name. So glad you came to celebrate Spirit. You are welcome here.
Indeed, we're glad everybody's here joining us today and celebrating their spirit. And if there are people in your heart this day who you'd like to have celebrate their spirit with you, whether they're on this side of the veil or the other side of the veil, and for whatever reason you'd like to have them with you, will you speak their name aloud as I light this memory candle? Eleanor, Emma, Evan, Miles, Avery. I light this candle in their name and in the name of peace everywhere. And now it's time to anchor ourselves in prayer. So as I sound my bowl 3 times, I invite you to allow the tone of this bowl to take you deep into that place where no harm has ever come. Deep into that place where you know and you know you are whole, perfect, and complete.
I need to be still. I need to be still and let God love me. I need to be still and let starts to push and shove me, I need to be still and let God love me. I need to be still and let God love me. I need to be still and let God love me. When the world starts to push and shove me, I need to be still and let God love me.
It is from the rising of the sun unto its setting that we recognize and know that this one power and this one presence is all that there is and all that needs to be. So as we set our intention for this day, we know that every message that is needed, every inspirational movement that is needed, this day is a perfect day, and it shall be manifested in each one of our lives. We open ourselves to it, we recognize and know it, and in the midst of it all, we are so thankful. No matter what we see, no matter what we feel, we know there is still only one divine presence of love in the universe, and it is in it that we live and we move and we have our being. So we release and we know and we let go, knowing that this is the day that God has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. And so it is. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Reverend Rick, and I have this morning's affirmation. If you would consider standing when we read it the second time, we would really appreciate it, just recognizing in the universe that we all agree in this together. Let me read. Today, I accept life on life's terms. I know that giving and receiving are not two activities, but one. Please rise. And together we read, today, I accept life on its life's terms. I know that giving and receiving are not two activities, but one, and so it is.
Good morning, CSA. My name is David Mormon, and I'm from your music and praise team. And I have today's sacred reading. Today's sacred reading is from the book Every Day I Pray by Iyanla Vanzant. It says, Dear God, please untie the knots that are invading my life. Please remove the have-nots, the can-nots, and the do-nots that invade my mind. Please erase the will-nots, the may-nots, the might-nots that invade my heart. Please release me from the could-nots, the would-nots, and the should-nots that invade my life. Most of all, dear God, I ask that you remove from my mind, my heart, and my life all the am-nots that I have allowed to hold me back. Please erase from my mind the thought that I am not good enough. Please erase from my heart that I am not loved enough. Please untie from my life everything that I can clutch that supports the belief that I am not enough. Today, dear God, I come to you humbly and reverently asking that you untie, eliminate, and erase all knots that have invaded every space of my life. For your mercy and your grace, I am so grateful, and so it is.
I wake up before I put on my makeup. I say a little prayer for you by combing my hair now and wondering what dress to wear now. I say a little prayer for you forever and ever. You stay in my heart and I will love you forever. Whenever I find you, I will love you forever. It's how it should be. Would only mean heartbreak for me. I'll run for the bus, dear. While riding, I think of us, dear. I say a little prayer for you. And through my break time, yeah, up through my coffee break time, I say a little prayer for you. Forever and ever, you stay in my heart and I will love you forever. Whenever I find you, I will love you. And ever is how it should be. Only mean heartbreak for me. And ever you stay in my heart and I will love you forever. Whenever apart, oh, I will. And ever baby, no, will only mean heartbreak for me.
Mr. Sam Phelps on the piano.
Forever and ever, you stay in my heart and I will love you forever. Whenever I find you, I will love you forever. It's how it should be. Will only mean heartbreak for me. Forever, you stay in my heart and I will love you forever. Whenever apart, oh, I will love you forever. Will only mean heartbreak for me.
Thank you. That's Miss Natasha Salau. Did I say that right? Shalau. Everybody, how lucky are we? How lucky are we? Let us prepare ourselves. If you put your hand over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And now over your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. Now if you put your hand over your heart and just extend out your arms, I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that God can only do for us what God can do through us. God can only do for us what God can do through us. Not only is it a good reminder for us to take 100% responsibility for ourselves, but it's also a helpful answer to the question, can God save America? And the answer is, of course, yes, certainly God can save America. But God can only save America through Americans. This week, I'm winding up a sermon on racism that I borrowed in the same way that Christians borrowed holiday decorations from pagans. I just took it. Well, it's not exactly the same, because I'm going to give credit to the author of this brilliant, what I consider to be a brilliant piece, with some minor edits from me to bring it into our language and our theology. But today's sermon on racism is from Dr. Howard John Wesley from the Alfred Baptist Church in Alexandria, Virginia. Now, this is part 2 of this sermon, because our Baptist friends, they like their sermons 45 minutes long, and we're a little more efficient. We like a little 20-minute sermon. But I was so struck by this that I couldn't edit out 20 minutes. So I broke it into 2 parts. If you missed part 1, it's on YouTube. The sermon is based on Jewish scripture from the minor prophets, and in this case, the book of Micah, chapter 1, verse 8. Why is it important for us to look back into Micah's time? Because so much of the disarray that I'm feeling right now, and I know some of you, maybe all of you, are feeling disarray in this country, is just like Israel in the time of Micah. Israel needed help, just like we do, to become loving, prosperous, thriving as a country for all its citizens, not just the 1%. In trying to help Israel, God sent 613 laws that if they would just follow them, life would be good. But of course, learning 613 laws is a trick, and following them is even trickier. So God said, okay, let's break these down into 3 laws, 3 commandments, and maybe if you follow those, you can lift yourself up. The 3 laws from Micah are these. Act justly. In other words, treat everybody with respect and the same. Love mercy. Forgive people. Walk humbly with God. We don't know everything. Last week, I went more deeply into the meaning, but they're not something you can't get just by looking at them. But last week is on YouTube. From these 3 commandments, Pastor Wesley developed 3 actions, what we would call spiritual practices. Number 1, create a vision of a country that is better than the country we're experiencing right now. Number 2, vote. And number 3, combat racism with our voices. Now, we're lucky in religious science because we understand the law of mental equivalence, which for those of you who are joining for the first time today, simply means having a picture of a desired experience. That's what a law of equivalence is. You have a picture of what it is you want to see and feel. See, we can use our faith to keep an improved America in front of us. We can have a picture of an America where kids play freely. I remember when my grandmother would just throw us out of the house in the morning and say, you know what, don't come back till noon. If you get thirsty, there's the hose. Just go play. Come back at noon, you'll find a sandwich on the porch, and then come back in the evening. Your parents will be home from work. They'll call you in to play. Don't you remember those times? So much freedom where you just went out. We need to have a picture of America where black moms are not taking antacids before their teens walk out the door. We need a picture of an America where COVID-19 is not killing more people of color per capita than white people due to unfair health care and food distribution systems. We need a mental picture of a country where you don't have to stand in line in the heat or the rain for hours to simply cast a vote. And here's the thing, you and I can build that picture. We can have that vision. So our first spiritual practice is visioning, and our second is to vote. If we want a changed America, we have to cast our vote. I feel almost embarrassed to have to say this, but past elections require me to do so. People are not voting because they don't like the gender of somebody. They are not voting because they don't like the personality of somebody. They're not voting because they don't want the age of somebody. Some people are not voting because they don't like the clothes that somebody wears. And that can't happen this year. Look, you are not marrying the candidate. You're not even having dinner with them. Maybe you're not voting because you don't think your vote matters. If you are a person who wants to be known as anti-racist, whether you are a white person, a person of color, a gay person, a transgender person, a woman or a man, and you want the blatant racism to stop in this country, know that if you don't vote, you are doing more damage to a community of color than any president, than any legislation, or than any hate group in America. Pastor Wesley says that not voting is even worse than the KKK. And for those of you who don't think your vote matters, let me take you back in time of American history. Between 1863 and 1877, America had a time of entered a time of Reconstruction, in which America was trying to make up for slavery and gave black people the right to vote given to them already by the 15th Amendment. And between 1863 and 1877, black people in America elected over 1,500 legislators in state houses. And from Mississippi, they elected 15 black people to the U.S. Congress and 2 to the Senate. Now, shortly after that, when the white majority realized what was happening, voter suppression started. And every kind of barrier imaginable to keep black people from voting was thrown up. And from that moment, the freedom fight, the civil rights fight, always was just about one thing: holding the right to vote. It had one objective: voting. People marched. People were beaten. People bled. People were lynched for one objective: the right to vote. So that your children and your children's children and their children and their children's children and on down the line could vote. So when the Voting Act of 1965 was passed, Martin Luther King called it the crown jewel of the civil rights movement, because everything they worked for, everything they died for, was all for the Americans' right, for all Americans to have the right to vote. So let me say this. If you don't vote, whether you're a millennial, a Gen Z person, or you're just too cool for school, or you have been on the sideline because your candidate was not your number one choice, because you had to wash your hair on election day, I don't know what it is, you have disrespected all people who worked and died for your right to vote. We can't just anymore wring our hands and say, ain't it awful? And voting is not just about the president. If you don't vote, you're saying that you don't care about the DA in your community. The district attorney is where justice begins. It's the district attorney who decides who is indicted. It's the district attorney who decides who gets to plea bargain and not. It's the district attorney who fails to indict police officers who kill black people. And when you don't vote, you can't sit on the jury and decide sentencing for people. When you don't vote, you have disqualified yourself from participating in the judicial system. I can't tell you who to vote for, because churches are not allowed to. And while many churches do, I won't. I will say, though, that for the election coming up, it is critical to vote your values. If you don't want babies in cages, you know how to vote. If you don't believe in a government-sanctioned militia in unmarked uniforms and cars rounding up peaceful protesters, you know how to vote. If you want everybody suffering from COVID to have medical care, you know how to vote. If you want a fully operational postal system that delivers checks and meds and yes ballots, then you know how to vote. Voting in this election is not just about the next 4 years. It's about the next 40 years. The President of the United States has the authority to appoint judges in the district court, in the appellate court, in the Supreme Court, throughout this nation, with lifetime appointments. This current president has appointed 198 judges in his 3.5 years in office, and most of them he's appointed for life. Do you want to know how many black judges? Out of that 198 judges he's appointed, how many were black? None. Not one. We don't get to holler Black Lives Matter if we don't vote, because you don't believe Black Lives Matter. You don't get to question why Breonna Taylor's murderers have not been brought to justice. You don't have anything to do with that. So first we have to have a vision of a better America. Second, we have to vote our values. And lastly, we have to use our voices to challenge racism. With our voices, we can challenge systemic racism in our families, in our corporations, in our churches, and yes, in our churches and in our communities. With our loving and compassionate voice, I'm not talking about screaming at people. I'm not talking about making other people bad. I'm talking about using our loving and compassionate voice that we can use to help our neighbor become aware of unconscious bias and racial insensitivities. With our compassionate voices, we can demand police changes. Yes, you can demand with a voice of compassion. And we can have peaceful and respectful conversations that broaden and give birth to new opportunities in our homes, in our schools, and in our communities. God has created an atmosphere in 2020 for this to happen, for us all to challenge racism with our voices. George Floyd's death has opened our ears, and social media has exposed and embarrassed the racist hypocrisy of many in this country. It is an outrage that Jacob Blake, a black man shot in the back 7 times by police in front of his kids, while a white man-child killed 2 protesters, Jojo Rosenbaum and Anthony Amber, and walked right by police, even though people were screaming that he killed. And I have some compassion for this man-child whose brain is not yet fully formed and who was taught hate from an early age to the degree that he thought it was his job to kill. Leaders of this country are calling for race wars, and they're getting it. Let me read you something from the New York Times. Kevin Matheson is a militia person, and he wrote to the Kenosha Chief of Police, Chief Miskinnis. As you know, I am the commander of the Kenosha Guard, a local militia. We are mobilizing tonight and have about 3,000 RSVPs. We have volunteers that will be in uptown, downtown, and at the entrances to certain other neighborhoods. And while the chief declined their assistance, local officers did not. Matheson said later, "We supplemented the police because they were outnumbered. And that's why I think we were appreciated. Those officers were scared, and I think that's why they welcomed us so warmly, giving us water and snacks and telling us thank you." Chief Meniscus' final observation of the killing of these 2 protesters is to shift blame onto the protesters, claiming that the shooting might not have happened if protesters weren't out after curfew. The atmosphere is fertile for change. It is fertile for change. We want it to change in the direction of authentic oneness and inclusivity. It is fertile time for us to lift our voices. Pastor Wesley tells the story of Ednita Wright, who was traveling to work and decided to bring her kids along. They went to a Hampton Inn, and she took the kids swimming after they checked in. The white manager came out and asked Ednita if she had the right to be there because, and I quote, "People like you often use the pool unauthorized." Ednita asked, "Who are people like me?" The manager kept asking for proof, so Ednita showed her a card that had given them access to the pool and the room and said, "That's all I need to show you." The manager did what white supremacists do and called the police. They came and they took the side of the manager and they demanded her to show ID. She said, "No. I'm not showing you ID because I've done nothing wrong." They then went to her car and ran her license plate because all people, black people, must have warrants out for their arrest of some kind. They then went to the front desk and saw that not only had she paid for one room, she paid for two, so her kids could watch TV and she could get some work done. Did she get an apology? No. Did she get an "I'm so sorry, this was a mistake"? No. In the past, that would have been swept under the rug. But we're in a different season now. And she recorded the entire thing, and it went viral. Hilton, who owns Hampton, immediately apologized and put out a statement that they do not tolerate racism in any form, and they fired the manager. Only thing that could have been better is if one or more of the white guests could have stood beside her and offered their voices to challenge racism. It's hard. It's scary. Jojo Rosenblum and Anthony Amber were white. Now, I know, and they got killed for it, so we're talking serious stuff. Now, I know it's hard to stand up and be confrontational. Some of us are naturally confrontational, and others of us believe that our one tiny little voice won't make a difference. You are disqualifying yourself from this momentous movement, full of potential, because you think that you think your voice won't make a difference. You think one little thing can't make a difference. I dare you. Try to go to sleep tonight with a mosquito in your room, and you will see how one little thing can make a difference. You won't go to sleep. I want us to be a tribe of mosquitoes. God within us is calling us to it. I have been called just for a time as this. You have been called just for a time as this. Let us together, with compassion, with love, say enough is enough. We're not having it anymore. Our black sisters and brothers need to be safe when they go outside. And we can do that. We can make a big start by listening to Micah chapter 1, verse 8. We can make a big start by doing these 3 simple things. Have a vision of a better America and keep it firm before you. No matter what you're seeing on TV or other places, have that vision firm before you. Don't stick your head in the sand. Don't not know what's going on, but don't make that the front of your mind. Make the front of your mind a better America. Vote. Vote like your life depended on it. And third, raise your voice in challenge to racism in this country. You and I can do that. It takes courage. And I've heard some people say, you know, I'm just kind of tired of the whole thing. I just wish it would go away. It's not going away. After George Floyd, it wasn't even 3 months before Jacob Blake was shot in the back in front of his children. It's not going away. And we can't go away either. Let us take this message into prayer. There's only one power. It's the power of the Most High. It's the power of love. It's the power of oneness. That's the power. And each one of us have that power within us. We have the power to change the world. And we certainly have the power to change America. It is within us. No more hand-wringing. No more empty shouting. We're going to do the work now on ourselves, our friends, our neighbors. We're going to keep this firm before us. I give thanks for the great one who has one word answer for everything, and that one word answer is always yes. You want a world where people are judged by the content of their character? Yes, of course. You want a world where people can know each other deeply? Yes, of course. I give you that and more. I give thanks to this great one. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.